Thanks, Dimitri.
All right, so we're going to get started here. First thing is the 2019 budget hearing, and Nikki is going to present that.
So we have 18-19 final revision tonight and 19-20 proposed. The 18-19 final revision that you all received in your packet is different from the June 10th numbers that you received. And the difference is merely in contingencies. So as I said at the June 10th meeting, the Uniform Budgeting Act requires us to be underspent in expenditures and over-collected in revenues. So I have to be as conservative as possible on both sides. So the June 10th numbers are my estimate, and then between then and now I've put little contingencies everywhere just in case. So that's the difference there. So the final revision fund balance that is before you right now for 18-19 is an ending fund equity of Fund 11 of $4,139,577, which is a fund equity percentage of it's 14.06% of expenditures. Fund 23, which is the pool, and Fund 25, food service, will both be they're both on your action list tonight as well. Fund 23, we trimmed. I think you can recall from the last meeting I talked about the pool dipping into their fund equity, and then next year the potential of overspending. So we've cut that budget, or the pool director cut the budget. So Fund 23 for final revision will leave a fund balance of $1,516. And then food service, just contingencies in there, that will leave a fund balance at $159,141. So those adjustments are just contingencies, and then of course the unknowns. So throughout July and August, anything that comes in that needs to be paid that actually happened before June 30th, we have to put back in the old year. So just to prepare for any unknowns or utilities, fuel costs for June, things that we can't nail down for sure, those items are reflected here. Do you have any questions about final revision? Okay. The proposed, so Fund 11, when we were here in June, beginning of June, we had anticipated a fund equity balance leaving 10.9% of the annual expenditures. The administrators, superintendent, and I, we met many times over the past 2 weeks, and through a matter of attrition and shuffling staff around, using them to the best of their abilities, but also to the best of the district's needs, we've been able to cut that budget a substantial amount. With our proposed numbers in June 10th, we were dipping into our fund equity of $1.1 million, and now we would be dipping into our fund equity of $514,000. We've also added a potential loss of 25 additional students to the revenue lines, so the revenue lines are less than what had been presented to you on June 10th as well. That's been factored into these figures. The rest of the funds, let's see. So the pool budget, as I said, we cut from both years. We cut from the 18-19, but most of the cuts came from the 19-20. So the 19-20 budget that you see before you for proposed will be cutting into the fund equity of $470. Food service budget. We have expenditures projected to be $976,069 for 19-20. Food service has a healthy fund balance. This proposed budget would have expenditures exceeding revenue by $14,720. The fiduciary activities, those are the student activities. Those little pots of money will be pulled into the general ledger this year. Those expenditures are the spending of fundraising activities primarily. So the expenditures equal the revenues. I'm just anticipating that they'll fundraise and they'll spend it. Debt service, that's just that's a reflection of the tax levy that we have for the bond service and those payments for next year. Those numbers are the same as what you saw on June 10th. And capital projects, those are also the same as the June 10th numbers, $200,000 moving from the general fund to support capital projects for next year. I think that's all of them. Have any questions about proposed?
I can speak at this time. You want to know how the cuts were made and how they came? Okay. So, I mean, the bad news is we cut a little over $800,000. The good news is we didn't lay a single teacher off. As Nikki said, through attrition and the fact that we are not replacing one of our administrators and reducing the student support services position. I don't want to say it's being totally eliminated because it's not. I'm talking with Greg Brown about that. We're short special ed teachers right now, so I've offered him a position as a special ed teacher with an additional stipend to coordinate the instructional assistants being trained, and those instructional assistants making sure that some have been here a long time, some are here and for a short time and they leave, that we can ensure that we're getting Medicaid billing done by them as it's supposed to be done. So he's not really, he's a loss from the administrative end, but he's a plus to into the teaching ranks, where I think, to use a military term, he's boots on the ground where we probably need it worse than we do where we're at. But he'll be kind of a hybrid position where he'll do some of both. We had several teachers that we just didn't fill because of where enrollment was. That's an adjustment that I don't know if it was made the year before. I don't know what you cut for teachers the year before because I wasn't here, so I really have no idea. It also takes out the contract of Mr. Rhodes, who resigned, and we are hiring for another special ed teacher. We've lost another teacher who was a senior teacher that will be replaced with, in several cases, there's senior teachers that will be replaced, but with more junior personnel or more lower, like BA Step 1 or BS Step 1 people, so that brings our costs down a little bit. Instructional coaches, 2 of those left, they won't be replaced. The other 2 will stay in line, and then by switching the start time of the 5th and 6th graders at Compass around, that saves us $43,000 in transportation cost from first student. And there's a few more I mean, there's a couple of small things in there, but I mean, they're pretty small compared to the $800,000.
And are we still projecting 150 from the state?
Yep,
That's going to be
150, yep. Additional foundation allowance, loss of 125 kids.
Have we seen anything more from them? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
And from a facility standpoint, are all the upgrades that we were presented, some of the maintenance things, I don't even remember if we got a schedule of when replacements need to be made as far as boilers, is that in the budget or no?
It is. I haven't seen that, so I don't know.
So there's no scheduled maintenance?
We have, I believe it's $200,000 of money that Mike Smith has at his disposal. Talked to him about that. I don't know if he's seen any study yet that talks about boilers being replaced. But you know, he said $200,000 to start, where he can start phasing things in. He's still getting the feel for that.
There should be some sort of replacement schedule of some sort, I would think. Should
There
be.
should be. I don't know where it would be.
I think the problem is that everything's 20 years old. You know, we built the high school.
Well, somebody probably had it, maybe it's just.
Mike had one, but he still worked here.
Okay, so there was one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, it's just a matter of, I mean, pretty much everybody here is a homeowner, so you know when you put a new furnace in, you don't just say, well, never have to do that again, unless you're my age and you figure the next one might be your last. But I mean, when you put one in, you know it's got a lifespan, a life expectancy around 20 years, give or take, so most people carry some savings or a budget for that, knowing it's not gonna last forever.
Is it normal to insert that though into the schedule? I mean, schools do that?
Yeah.
They don't just keep up some money over here for that, or?
I think it's normal to plan
Okay.
for the, yeah.
Where are we at with the pool maintenance? Pool, I mean, we're cutting their budget, is it operating all right now?
Again, that's more of a Mike Smith question at this point. I haven't been that involved with the pool, other than it's expensive. I mean, I know it's been down a lot, because my wife likes to go in the wintertime and swim early with her friend, and several times they went up there and it was just, sign said not open. Other than that, I haven't got onto the pool.
They just had some work done, I think, last year.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
It gets work done every year. And I know that from being the athletic director for a couple of years and working in that building for several. It just, it's a high, you know, you've got chlorine gas floating through there, it's caustic. You have the Dectron, which is supposed to help filter that, I believe, and bring in fresh air. Is that, if anybody here knows more with the Dectron?
I don't know if that system is new or not, but that can be a big problem.
It's a big expense too.
Yeah.
You know, I know
But it can cost you a lot of money ruining things.
right.
Lockers and,
And that happened when
Right.
Mike Smith first came, I know that, so. I don't know what the life expectancy is on a Dectron, but
Okay.
I can certainly find that out for him and email it out to you guys.
or we can have him come in and give us a talk.
Sure,
Yeah,
either
that'd
way.
be great.
Okay.
Okay, yep, he'd be happy to.
Thank you.
You want to close research? Might have to advise us. We're still waiting on some copies, so bear with us. So it starts there, right? Just this. So that's.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the certification of property taxes?
It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education certify the property tax rate for the non-pre-tax levy at 18 mils operating. Certify the tax rate of 0.25 mils for recreation pool, and certify the tax rate for the 2015 debt fund levy at 7.2 mils to service the debt funds for the 2020 for the July 1st, 2019 property tax levy.
Get a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call? Roll call, Suzanne, is that?
Yes.
Nope.
Aye.
Becky?
Aye.
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 Ted Simpson? Aye. All right, move on to the next one.
I got the list.
All right.
We will get. Next one is the community service fund for the pool. I think this is this one. Okay. Top one. It is recommended that, it doesn't sound like it is working. Can you hear this?
Not very well.
No, it's definitely.
Wait a second.
Hello?
Usually I can hear it a little reasonably, but not hearing it.
There's the big one.
Now it's got this too. Sorry. So there's like 90 packets. I can try to talk louder.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the attached resolution appropriating the total expenditures for the 2019-2020 fiscal year in the amount of $27,961,376 for the Tecumseh Public School General Fund.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Abbott? Aye. Vicky?
Aye.
Simpson? Aye. Benson? McNamara?
Aye.
More aye.
That's the next one. We just need that one. It's food service. The first one is on the pool. Yep. It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the food service fund budget for expenditures in the amount of $985,593 for the 2019 school year.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson? Aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
More aye.
Thank you, that makes it so much easier for me.
You're welcome. Oh, there we go.
I think it's,
Now it's-
hey, now you can hear it.
It's an act.
That's the first one. I see.
Huh? I don't know. Let's try that one.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Now it's going to be really loud. It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the Community Services Fund budget with expenditures in the amount of $234,350 for the 2020 school year.
Get a motion, second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Moore, aye.
It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the Fiduciary Activities Fund budget with expenditures in the amount of $470,000 for the 2020 school year.
You get a second?
Second.
Thank
Any
you.
discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Moore, aye.
It is further recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the debt fund budget for debt services for the 2015 bond issue with expenditures that include principal, interest, and payment fees in the amount of $4,463,813 for the 2020 school year.
Get a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Moore, aye.
It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the capital projects fund budget with expenditures in the amount of $200,000.
And get a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Moore, aye.
Now we gotta approve the plan.
It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the Community Services Fund budget with expenditures in the amount of $234,350 for the 2020 school year.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Moore, aye.
Okay. It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public Schools Board of Education adopt the attached resolution appropriating and revising total expenditures in the amount of $29,442,645 for the 2018 to 2019 fiscal year for the Tecumseh Public Schools General Fund budget.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Moore, aye.
Two more.
It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the Community Service Fund budget with expenditures in the amount of $273,239 for the 2019 school year.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagner, aye.
Moore, aye.
That's it. Nikki, do you have the 2018-2019 food service final budget request revision form? Look at 2020 and 2018.
These are the two that you guys did before.
It is recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the food service fund budget with expenditures in the amount of $985,593 for the 2019 school year.
Can I get a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagoner, aye.
Moore, aye.
And if you're unsure who did this one, man, it won't hurt to do it again. All right. This one may be a do-over, we're not sure. It's recommended that the Tecumseh Public School Board of Education adopt the attached resolution appropriating total expenditures for the 2019-2020 fiscal year in the amount of $27,961,376 for the Tecumseh Public Schools General Fund.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Abbott, aye.
Brooks, aye.
Simpson, aye.
Benzing, aye.
Wagoner, aye.
Moore, aye.
I will put these up for Kevin to do minutes. I think so. Yes.
Okay, we're gonna recess for a minute until we can get our board packets. So,
Well, we can do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, I'd like to know who's in charge of those board packets, to be honest.
Mrs. Hank was in charge of them, she's not here today.
But they should have been printed like maybe Friday, so
And they were,
we could pick them up.
they were.
They were printed?
Yep, they just weren't copied.
Oh.
So that's what Anna's doing right now. She may, I can run up there real quick. She had probably enough, or there's probably enough of them right now.
Yeah, we can share it.
Okay, I
Okay.
can do that. Do you want to do that, or
Yeah.
pledge first, or?
Might as well do the pledge. We don't
Yeah.
need a board packet for that.
right.
Mike, you want to take over since Kevin's out?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job.
Okay, this will bring us to our first public comment portion of the evening. It's on agenda items only. So if you would like to speak on agenda items, please come to the podium, state your name, and you're limited to 3 minutes because our agenda is full for the day.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Marr. I'm one of the orchestra teachers here at Tecumseh. I just was coming to clarify something. Joe McKinchek had asked me to come this evening to talk to you about the high school music trip that had been on the agenda, and I don't see it on tonight's printed copy. So I was wondering if that had been moved to a different evening, or if it was just somehow left off of this printed copy versus the one that was posted online.
Well,
It was on mine.
it was
Okay.
originally on there, but maybe
I had seen it originally under
back.
discussion and then also under action, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, it was on the email version.
Well,
How can it not be on this?
I'm happy to present this evening if you
Okay.
can fit me in.
Yes.
all right.
Okay, sounds great. I'll get up here with you then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Where should I have done?
It was under the discussion items, yeah, the entrance.
That's on.
It was under discussion and then action as well.
It's under action, not discussion. Okay.
The next item is.
Actually, I was waiting.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Jennifer Landstrom, and this might be something that you're already planning on doing, but seeing that the superintendent search is mentioned on your agenda tonight, I would like to kindly ask you to consider reinstating the policy that required the district to have a highly qualified superintendent before you start that official search.
Anybody else? to discussion items. We got to set up a date for the July meetings, the organization meeting, where we set our calendar for the year, our meetings. Most likely we'll have to approve the calendar for the schools all at that meeting. So, a little calendar. I mean, 8th is right after 4th of July weekend. What about maybe the 15th?
What day of the week is that?
It's a Monday.
I can do that day, but I'm leaving town the next day.
The 15th?
I'm leaving town the 16th,
Okay.
so I'm okay for the 15th.
Okay.
You good? 15th? You good?
Yeah, we can do it.
All right.
You ain't got that camper yet.
No, I'll be coming down.
It'll be 7th. We'll vote on that here in a minute. So. All right, next item is.
Now, I got a question. Can that be like a working session for the board, like a retreat type thing, where the board can just go and talk about their goals and kind of regroup?
We can make that part of it.
Because I know Milton used to go on retreats. It was always Saturday for 3 or 4 hours. The superintendent was usually there. Or maybe the superintendent wasn't even, I don't remember, but. You remember?
No, superintendent usually is invited, like, from MASB or something.
Yeah.
Or
Okay, we'll talk about it.
All right, next is the MHSAA cooperative agreement for the high school hockey program. Mr. DeVito, can I comment that?
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come to present to Tecumseh Public Schools, an effort to create the first ever high school hockey program here in Lenawee County. So there's a bit of irony in the fact that I'm here tonight, because the very first conversation that I would have had with anybody in the school system about developing this happened about 5 years ago. It happened to be in Greg Lewis's office, who at the time was the assistant principal at Tecumseh Middle School and also the athletic director. I happened to be in his office as we were discussing a disciplinary issue, not for my son, he was the good kid in it, with the other guy who was up to some no good stuff. And as Greg and I worked through that process a little bit, I noticed in the background of his office he had some Detroit Red Wing memorabilia, so I said, hey, are you a hockey fan, a Red Wings fan by any chance? He sat up and said, oh, the Red Wings, let me tell you about the Red Wings. So we spent about the next 15 minutes going back and forth on hockey, and I said, Greg, this is probably about 3 years too soon. But let me tell you about a plan that we have to develop high school hockey here in Lenawee County. And he said, really? And I shared with him the data that we had at that point, where we were going, the vision that had been cast through the Adrian Youth Hockey Association, of which I serve as president. And Mr. Lewis just sat up, he was excited. We had a few follow-up meetings to discuss this. I think it was about the third meeting that Greg said to me, he goes, I'm all on board. I'll do whatever I can to make this happen. By the way, I retire, so I won't be here to see it, but good luck.
I was wrong.
You're wrong. You came back just for hockey. So, again, we appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak. Where we are at this moment is the Adrian Youth Hockey Association, as I mentioned, about 5 years ago began a study to see how many youth hockey players we had in Lenawee County. So what we started to do is just identify those who were part of our association. That was the easy part of the data to gather. We started to look at other associations in Ann Arbor, Chelsea, Sylvania, Jackson, throughout the region to find out where these kids were playing, what grades they were in, and how we could develop a funnel of kids coming through, keeping the pipeline strong, that by the time our oldest kids, who were 2001, 2002 birth years, got to their junior and senior years, if we had a solid enough plan in place to form a high school hockey team. So after the initial meetings with Mr. Lewis, we kind of shelved it for a little bit. He passed along my information to John Zajac, who couldn't be here tonight but asked me to present. And it was 2 years ago that I reached back out to Mr. Zajac and John Roberts, the AD at Adrian Public Schools, myself along with our Vice President, Mark Cortizon, to sit down and revisit the conversation that we first had with Mr. Lewis many years ago. And when we gathered those two athletic directors to kind of sit around the table and show them the data that we had collected to identify these kids who have come through, the number of children, student athletes in Lenawee County, kindergarten through 8th grade then, who were playing youth hockey, we figured if we had at least one of the two schools that said, yes, we believe in this, that we were going to be good to go. If we had both, even better. If neither Tecumseh nor Adrian wanted to move forward at that time, it probably would have been a dead issue and we just would have moved on. So both were excited and said that they would be glad to throw their support behind it as long as we could take steps together to really figure out the process of how a co-op would work, what it would look like, and to ensure that we were being compliant with MHSAA rules. So 2 years ago, as we started that process, we kind of pumped the brakes a little bit after year one, just understanding that there were some unknown variables that we wanted to allow to settle before we really got our feet off of the diving board. We maintained contact with the schools that we had originally reached out to, and the day that we had to really boil it down, we wanted to find out which school districts within Lenawee County had the greatest population of hockey players. Our goal was not to exclude anyone. We wanted to include everybody. Unfortunately, the MHSAA has rules as to how many participating schools that you can have for an individual sport, which is based off of high school enrollment of students. So we leaned on the ADs and the student count numbers to really understand which of those districts were going to be able to fit, matched off of the data that we had boiled down so that we could not exclude anybody who wanted to play high school hockey in Lenawee County. As we pumped the brakes, we had a very successful year last year at AYHA, again, building the excitement, developing the student athletes. We circled back around to meet with the school districts again and said, now the toes are off of the end of the diving board, we're ready to go. Are you still interested? Can we sit down and make this happen? We went and we met again with Adrian and Tecumseh as the two primary schools to be part of this. The other schools that had the concentration of players who would be impacted positively by this were Clinton, Addison, Madison schools, and Lenawee Christian. So we took a look at those 7, which kept us below the student count under MHSAA that would allow us to include those 7 representative schools, and really it encompassed about 99% of the youth hockey players who would be potentially impacted by offering a high school hockey program. Where we are now is we've had the other schools already accept formally through their different board meetings. Adrian was probably the last one about 45 minutes ago. Another representative was there just to take that next step of formality. What we have done is formed a nonprofit that will run the business entity, so it's revenue neutral to all school districts. It's a pay-to-play, or pay-to-participate for each of our student athletes. Those who are playing hockey, especially as they get to high school age, the parents and the families understand what that's all about. My own kids play, or else I wouldn't be standing here either. So we take these steps and we understand the financial commitment, the time commitment, quite honestly the travel commitment, until an option like this becomes available. So where we've already taken the process to start to form this, we put together a team in the summer. We currently have 36 kids who are grades 8 through 12, skating in a summer program, which is the first time that we ever offered it. We were hoping to get 17. So we got 36 kids participating in a Chelsea Summer Hockey League, which is high school competition. Last update I had, we're beating Pioneer tonight, 2-0 in the second period, so that's a good thing. We won our first game Friday night against Jackson United 6-5, so we must be on the right track, right? Just like the Red Wings. Well, almost. So basically with the nonprofit running it, the link that this entity will have to the schools is obviously a direct connection to the athletic directors. Each of the student athletes that will be part of our program has to report directly to their school. Not only do we expect the student athletes to uphold MHSAA standards, the requirements for boys ice hockey, but they also have to make sure they're making the commitment to the school district itself. The philosophy that we have is we know in Michigan, those that are playing competitive hockey by the time they're 16 and 17 years old, they're likely playing midget AAA or traveling with some different associations. What our program does is allow those student athletes who play hockey that want to enjoy the sport with their classmates who maybe have never had the opportunity, who want to do multiple sports, because again, if you're playing midget major AAAs. It's almost a year-round proposition. We want our student athletes to be able to participate in football if they want to do so in the fall. Hockey's got to be the primary in winter, but do something else in the spring. We're excited to bring it to Lenawee County. The other school districts that are on board are certainly excited. We've had the support of Adrian College, the rink at Arrington. We wish we had more ice there. Unfortunately, we'll have to buy ice in Chelsea and Jackson. So until we can get another ice sheet built here in Lenawee County, a little bumpy, but we figured that would also weed out those student athletes who are serious about doing this. The plan is for us to provide transportation to away games, but certainly when we're doing practices, it'll create a little bit of a challenge for the parents and the student athletes to get themselves to and from practices. Outside of that, I know the student athletes are excited about it. As I said, 36 students that are participating right now in the summer program, 14 of which are current TPS students. So Tecumseh, at least in our summer program, is the most represented school district. Again, appreciate the opportunity and happy to answer any immediate questions that you may have.
So this doesn't cost Tecumseh anything, zero, all we got to do is tell you if they're getting good grades and being good students and so.
Absolutely. So the plan that we followed was very similar to Chelsea High School when they began their program. I had the pleasure of meeting with Don Wright, who's their executive director. Basically said, show me your business plan. How did you start this 10 years ago? We're going to do it in about 2 years. How do we do this? So through a series of fundraising efforts, there's not a single student athlete on his teams now that have any out-of-pocket expenses. We hope to get there soon.
So we just have like a Lenawee County team? Pioneer
Correct.
has all kids from Pioneer?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So last year, MHSA had a total of 127 boys high school hockey programs. Of those 127, 80 were co-op opportunities.
Okay.
So more than one school tied in. Yep, but Lenawee United would represent the 6 school districts, and Lenawee Christian is the 7th.
Is Chelsea, is that an individual team, or are they still draw from other schools too?
Well, historically they've been a single entity team with no school of choice in Chelsea, but their numbers are such that they are exploring co-op opportunities. Thank you very much.
Amy, on our schedule, you are on there, so I don't know what happened to the other one, but we do have you.
Okay.
So you're up.
All right. Well, hello again. I'm hoping in your packet that you've received a copy of the potential itinerary for the high school band and orchestra trip proposed to be in March of next year. If not, I can certainly read it aloud. But I believe okay, it's in there somewhere, but you've got a huge stack, so I'll go ahead and summarize and read as we go. We have been working with a tour company, Thornaple, who has been doing some great trips with us at the middle school level. We'd like to explore that with the high school this year. We are looking at going to Nashville in March of 2020. The dates are March 25 through 27. I believe in one spot on your on the itinerary that you have might say the 28th, but it's actually just a 2-night trip. And we would be going down to Nashville and then on our way back up, going to the Mammoth Caves National Park in Kentucky. Some of the highlights included in the Nashville portion are that we would be obviously visiting a city with a huge musical tradition, very rich tradition there. Every ensemble will have at least one performance opportunity. The band students would be touring a recording studio where Elvis Presley recorded, and they'd be doing some jazz band work there. And the orchestra students, being in Nashville, would have a really amazing opportunity to work with working bluegrass and do some different workshops and things there while in Nashville. Also, they'd be able to tour the Country Music Hall of Fame and do a performance on the steps of that facility as well. So definitely a very exciting opportunity for our learners, our students to participate in. And as I said, it would be a 2-night trip. We'd be gone from March 25 through 27. When they were looking at those dates, they were looking at the athletic calendar and trying to avoid as many conflicts as possible. So that's why that particular week was selected. And we're just really excited to be able to have that opportunity to provide those to the kids. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go into more details on things if you have anything you'd like me to expand on.
Have you done this before?
The overnight with the kids?
Yeah.
Not for this. Years ago, back in 2008, I took some orchestra students to Grand Rapids for the Michigan Music Conference, and then a few years later, we had some orchestra students go there. But in terms of overnight with band and orchestra, the McKinchecks and I have not done anything like that. So we're definitely excited to explore that.
Oh, Nashville too, that's a.
Right, I mean,
very
I've
awesome
personally
place to
been to
go.
Nashville, and
Yeah.
it's incredible, especially as a fiddler. But so we're excited to share that with the kids.
If you hit the minimum, do you gotta worry about the empty seats?
So let me pull up where you're looking at. It's
I'm looking at
yep, I got it right here. So it's based on the quad participants and then the minimum of 106 paying participants. If it's such that we only have one bus worth, because this is based on 2 buses worth, that's something that we're certainly going to look into with the tour company. Also, obviously, if it gets to the point where it's ridiculous, then before we booked anything like we do with any trip, we'd certainly make sure that people knew what it would be looking at. Based on the response, though, that we've had with our grades 5 through 8 students with the trips that we've done to Cleveland the last 2 years, we've had waiting lists. Granted, this is overnight, so perhaps there will be less people interested in that because of that overnight component, but we know that our music students certainly love going to explore musical venues and going on trips such as this.
Heck, I want.
What is the ratio for chaperones? It's on here, I apologize, I didn't see it.
I actually don't know that it's on there. When we've done our trips, it's usually one to every 4 or 5. I'll double check with our tour company and see what their recommendation is with that. Obviously, we will make sure that we have what is recommended from there.
I assume you guys are doing some fundraising.
I'm not sure if those are in the plans. To be honest, I'm presenting on behalf of Joe, who's been doing the most of the legwork with this. But with other things, if there are kids that have asked for support with that sort of thing, we certainly give them ideas for fundraising. And if it's something that it looks like there's the need or the interest, perhaps we'll be able to do something along the lines of candy bars or something along those lines to help kids out. Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, next up is technology service proposal. So we hear from Runaway ISD, Nicholas Adams first.
Good evening. A lot of you know I'm not Nicholas. There we go. I was going to say, don't leave now. I just wanted to, preface kind of our offer or the proposal that was put forward. As a lot of you know, we're a regional service agency. Many of our services come without a fee. Professional development, special ed services, and different things we do are structured different. Our 2 main areas of contracted service are in the area of technology and business service. I know you're familiar with the business service. And I just, one, appreciate the opportunity for you to reach out and ask for the proposal. But I would also say to the folks in the room here, we're certainly not, our goal isn't to compete with, your local staff. And I say that from the standpoint of, we come about these services generally in a couple of different ways, whether it's business or technology when we're looking at contracted services. In a perfect world, somebody looks ahead and says, either through retirement or a need for a change, they reach out to us far in advance and we go about it from a planning stage that way. Another scenario is a district finds themselves in some sort of a crisis and we are asked to step in, and that's happened more so in the technology than the business service, to be honest, over the years. And then the third way is somewhere in between, or a situation like this where you're evaluating how to move ahead. So I'll certainly say whichever direction you go, we understand it. There's pros and cons to both. A lot of you know I served for 9 years in Onstead. We had our own services. They may reach a point in time, whether it's business or technology, where they'll reach out. We're happy to provide the service. We're confident we can provide what we say we can do, and the better heads up or notice we have, we can staff properly. But I'll let Nicholas handle the actual questions you might have related to either the proposal or some of the tech services. That's certainly his expertise, but we just wanted to basically open with that or offer that we appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity. Anybody have any questions about the proposal?
One of the things that came up in early discussions was the migration to Microsoft Outlook and that package. I think we're actually quite happy with the Google Suite and the Google Mail that we're using right now, and the cost is obviously fitting our budget. Is that a requirement to go to Outlook?
So to best explain that, just last week, I just finished up migrating Edison schools, and they had the G Suite, but solely the G Suite. And what we do with our partnership and the services that we provide, we not only bring in the G Suite, because we have those same products, but we add the Microsoft 365 products as well, which gives students and staff that catalog of both items to work with, not just solely the G Suite products. Now they can have the experience on the Microsoft side, which is really great when they get out to the business world, start applying for jobs, they have those experiences they can have. So what we do in our situation, we put them both in, but in that pot, what we have is an overlap when it comes to mail. We can't deliver it in both locations and properly support it with FOIA and all those things. So what we do is we rely on that Outlook component to be able to deliver the mail.
What about licensing? Because, I mean, those Microsoft products are not cheap.
Fortunately with the Microsoft product, with education, they give us very steep discounts. And so typically there'll be like they change from year to year, but the way they do their calculations, but they usually have like unlimited student licenses. So when we talk about the licensing that would be needed for this environment, we're talking about a home use program as well, so students and staff can download Office at home for 5 copies at no additional cost. Things like that that are incorporated with the Microsoft product that make it a valuable product, as well as just the regular business opportunities that can take place for the staff and the administration. They have those tools in addition to the G Suite product. So it's really kind of a nice way to do both worlds together. It's just one of those things when they overlaps that calendar, contacts, and Outlook kind of component, that Gmail component that you're used to. So we just migrated Edison last week. We sat down with each of their staff that attended the orientation afterwards, and we went through all the different steps, the printers, the migration of documents, the migration of email, contacts, calendar events, and then we went through the basic steps of the Outlook components, and we're planning on doing a follow-up PD session with them as well. So I know that they're not going to be really involved with the summer, but when they return back to school, we have a process and a plan for them to do some training and some PD time.
And we have a lot of Chromebooks.
Yeah.
In our school. Are you guys willing to repair those too?
Absolutely.
And so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big focus to make sure that the students are on a regular basis up and running. When there's issues, we address those as quickly as possible.
I'm assuming the fees for the Office 365 are not part of your proposal?
They're an assessment. Generally, it takes like a staff count involved, and then whatever servers are on the environment. And part of our process, some of the cost savings in year 2 and year 3, is looking for opportunities to consolidate that equipment and that services at the ISD, which means ultimately for the district that they don't have to pay for those additional hardware and software costs once it becomes part of the ISD. So, you know, it could be as simple as consolidating wireless controllers. Instead of having one in a district, well, the ISD has 2. We add the licensing that would be paid by the district into the ISD, so now you have dual redundant controllers when it comes to Wi-Fi. We look at those opportunities whenever we have a chance to evaluate servers. So that doesn't always necessarily happen that first year, but as we migrate things or things become end of life, we look for opportunities to save the district's money in those cases.
You were saying something about the website licensing or something?
Yeah, there's, and probably some of the administrators back there can speak to it better, but we was brought up about website licensing or something like a safeguard that was an expense. One of you back?
He was asking about for
Oh.
ADA and so forth.
So you have a certain contractor vendor for a web presence? Typically, the district chooses what website they want to use. A lot of them use like a product like Foxbrite and things like that that have built-in ADA accessibility components. I worked on ours previously, and usually it needs to be a paired product where you want to have that regular monitoring of those compliance factors. You know, some of it's just quality assurance when it comes to broken links and misspelling, but then it goes to far deeper product things when it comes to how the site can be read by anybody with an impairment of sorts. So, it's very valuable and it's critical to have those things in place. But I recommend finding a solution that includes that package as one versus trying to outsource a third one to come in and monitor. That usually costs you more than it is just, going right off the bat with a new site, that kind of thing.
What did Addison spend in licensing for the, I mean, I know they're a smaller district than us, but just.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know what, I can always look that up. Now, we have Addison, Burton Deerfield, Sand Creek, as well as the ISD. And so what we do is take their staff count, they provide a staff count, and we run it through the Microsoft calculation. So, some districts might be paying $2,000, some might be $3,000, some might be $5,000. It really just depends on the staff count, and as that fluctuates year to year, it's a pass-through cost. It's really what it is to maintain that licensing agreement on behalf of the district and that combined product that goes into it. So, ultimately, it's a great opportunity. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Devin from Tecumseh Public Schools.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. We're going to start off with a presentation, first of all, of who we are. We haven't had a chance to meet with you guys yet and talk about technology, so we want to start kind of at the beginning. Obviously, we're all new. Jay's going to locate the cord. On a side note, we also offer students and teachers Office 365 Live for no cost. That's available to all educational institutions, I believe. We just prefer Gmail, apparently. So, GPS technology. Let's start out with who we are. Devin Knight, Director of Technology. And I'm going to let my guys introduce themselves because I think it's important for you to meet them, to hear from them. Sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shane Ellerson. I've been working in the technology department since April 29th. The prospect of standing here today defending my job was unthought of on my first day. I came into this headstrong hoping to make a difference while being aware of the challenges this district faces. I came into this job for long-term employment. I have bills. I have a family to take care of. I have a father that is in mid to late stages of multiple sclerosis that depends on me fiscally. This isn't just possibly saving an incredibly skewed amount of $40,000 a year. This is the livelihood of 3 people who come to work every single day to make a difference in the lives of children and staff. We love what we do. Devin, Jay, and I have accomplished a tremendous number of things here at TPS, and we have huge plans to do much more. I really hope due diligence is done to see and consider what we have accomplished. Thank you.
Really not one for public speaking. My name is Jean-Pierre Cazer. Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you.
I am a veteran. I am a father. I am a family man. I am TPS. When I decided to come to TPS, I came knowing what was going to happen. I knew the state that TPS was in. I am still here. I still want to be here. To talk about the situation that's going on, part of it being the Chromebooks that you brought up, sir. We have a one-for-one technology program, and that will be hurt. Teachers will be hurt, students will be hurt. You need TPS Technology Department.
These guys are passionate about what they do. I am extremely lucky to have these two guys working with me. I could not do a fraction of what we've done without them. They made a huge difference to our district. I just want you to know who they are, see what we've done. Haven't been here a long time. I started in February. Around 90 work days. Jay's been on board for 80. Shane a lot less. We've done a lot though. 542 tickets closed, issues resolved. That's not duplicate issues, that's not issues that disappeared or were no longer relevant, things we couldn't buy due to budget restrictions. Those are problems solved. That doesn't count the number of times we walk into a school and people say, oh, technology's here, could you also look at this? Dozens and dozens of other things that have been fixed. When I came in, half of our security cameras weren't online. Problems with switches, problems with cabling, we got those sorted out. Enhanced 911 information was not correct. If you placed a 911 call from one school, first responders might go to a different location. That should scare everyone. That is now sorted out. We have a policy and a procedure to review things like that so it doesn't happen again. When I came in, there were no backup systems. One of our backups was on the 3rd floor of this building in pieces. The other one was at the high school. It wasn't functional. Both of those are operational, located in 2 different buildings away from the main server.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What do you mean by backup systems?
So our largest server is actually what we call a VM server, or a virtual machine. It's basically one large computer that houses multiple different computers inside of it. If that had failed, which thankfully is new hardware, it's very reliable, but if it had failed, it would have been catastrophic data loss. You don't back up, you don't return from data losses like that. So we're very lucky that nothing happened in that meantime, but we do have current backups.
Thanks.
Hundreds of Chromebooks we've repaired. I've lost count. Screens, keyboards, motherboards, all done here, all done in this building. We don't outsource anything. There are some really cool things that I'd like to do. I have some electronics background. I've been tinkering with PC hardware for 2 decades. We could bring in some hot air reflow stations, some soldering. We could do main board repairs on site. We could save some money there. Those aren't cheap. Dozens and dozens of teacher laptops and PCs. Many haven't been updated at all. The average HP 450 G2 that we pick up needs 200 plus OS updates. Almost all of them have viruses. A lot of them have malware. We recently picked one up that had been hacked and was under the control of someone outside of the TPS network. Those are being fixed. Phones, projectors, infrastructure hardware, you name it. Switch cabling. We fixed a lot of different issues. Internet filtering. We have GoGuardian software. I think we pay $17,000 a year for that. It protects students on site and off. When they're out of our network, they're still protected. We block vastly more content than we did before. So the state of technology at TPS, it's not great. It's stable. It's okay. You know, we have things backed up. We have things running. We're working on better policies and procedures to make sure some of these critical things don't happen again. We're okay. Our current VM server currently runs at about 17% capacity. We could easily duplicate things on that server and have plenty more room. It's probably good for 5 to 10 more years before we need server upgrades. The phone, camera, and door security servers are all operating as expected. That hardware is a little bit older, but it's still okay. We should consider some backups. We can do that on the VM server itself. We have the capacity and the hardware. Doesn't need to be a tremendous extra cost. So we've done a lot, but what haven't we had a chance to do? When I came in, I was really excited about an intern program. I have 2 students in the district myself, and I have a lot of experience that I could share with students. Hands-on experience, hands-on training that would immediately translate to employable skills. We could do a lot there. Asset tracking. We honestly have no idea how many Chromebooks are out there. $3,500 to $5,300, depending on if you go with the Go Guardian counts or the M-Step counts. It's a huge hole. We need to fill that gap. We could develop a low-cost database and go with barcode labels. There are fancier options, RFID tags, things like that. We don't necessarily need that, but we can do better than nothing. Enhanced network security. We've had some security issues. We're going to do a lot better in that area. Shane is one class away from double degrees in cybersecurity. He has found a tremendous amount of problems and patched them in his first few weeks here. We are far better off than we were before. So, what does it take to solve full-time problems? A lot of hours. That's my hours weekly since I started. The one in the middle there got a little bit crazy. That's 84 and a half.
I'll say.
We don't have part-time problems here. Here's me walking into North, 10 p.m., me walking into Compass at 9:30, dropping off teacher laptops. Teachers use their laptops during the day. They don't want to give them up for repairs. We've been doing them after hours. Bottom corner is me showing up to fix live streaming at the high school. Griff had an incredible opportunity to live stream graduation. 1 hour before, it went down. We carried a box of cable there so we could run a new one upstairs and fix it. Less than 10 minutes later, Jay walked in behind me with his kids. Supposed to be taking them to the park that day, but he came to work. We don't have part-time problems. A lot of things, and there's more that we were going to add. And a couple things came up today, so we didn't really get to rehearse this. But there are a lot of events that you're going to want after-hours support. We've been here. We are here. I get that we're here to try to save some money. The previous administration had contracted with Common Resource to handle a lot of our network issues. We haven't used Common Resource in weeks. We can terminate those services and save that amount of money per month.
Who's Common Resource? Who's Common Resource?
They're a third-party vendor that offers remote services. I believe they're based in Ohio.
Okay.
That was, Ryan did that.
When he
switched over.
Yeah, there was no idea.
The contract was signed by Ryan and Kelly.
And that's a canceled anytime contract?
There is a clause on one of the invoices that says that the phone monitoring service requires a 36-month term.
36 months?
36 months. That is not in the initial contract, so I'm going to leave it up to the lawyers to battle that one out. We no longer need those services. We can save that amount of money. We could also renegotiate printer services. Our current contractor, MT Business, has been in here quite a bit. They'll bring in all brand new Xerox hardware, saves us around $5,000 a month. We can save a tremendous amount more than that using paper cut software and limiting color copies. We needlessly waste color copies and it's extremely expensive. We could save easily $60,000 to $80,000 a year on printing alone, probably far more than that. Recently, Xerox called and said they'll make the first 3 payments if we switch. We didn't switch.
They'll do it.
I hope so. Money's on the table. If you want to save money, we can help you save money. But you have to come and work with us. We also had a competing bid from Perry Protech. They were a little bit higher. So, if you decide to outsource, I want you to carefully consider the proposal. We looked through it, and there are some things in there that you should be aware of. We covered the Microsoft Outlook Gmail debate. In the proposal, and you're going to want to clarify this, there is a clause that says that the quite critical camera and door security systems are going to stay here and be maintained by TPS employees. You're going to need someone to do that. Also, the existing infrastructure, routers, switches, access points, network cable, network ports, the things students like to break, you own those as well. TPS employees are going to have to maintain those. Make sure you ask a lot of questions. Please come to my department and ask me questions. I'd love to sit down with you guys and talk about it. We're not a small district. I'm going to close with this. We're not a small district. We don't have small problems. I think that speaks a lot. The student council alone. you for your time. Can I answer any questions for you?
So you were talking about Xerox, the copiers and that sort of thing. At some point in time before our initial superintendent left, we had talked about different companies competing, and I offered to give her some information, because I happened to be getting new copies for my business at that time. If you want those names to get some bids, I'm happy to give them to you, or if you want to get those bids to us, whichever.
The bidding has to go with Nikki.
Okay.
It has to be a formal bid process. Right. So, I
But-
think Nikki's going to be working on this.
Perfect. So, if we were spending that in maintenance fees, that's ridiculous.
Well, and why is Nikki working on that? Because ISD does our copiers now? Or-
No, she's in charge of finance, so anytime we put our RFP out,
She does the RFPs, okay.
I know that a lot of copy companies auto-select color copies on their color printers. Have we gone back and, I mean, can we go back and turn those all to black and white as the default?
We can set a group policy to set that. The problem is people change those. Part of the problem is we have exclusively color printers in certain locations, and they print because they're nearby.
You can only print in color?
Exactly.
With some of them. Yeah, because Tim and I talked about this a couple of months ago, and I figured, so you're thinking we could save 60 to 80 grand a year? Just by
Minimum. With follow-me printing and other services like that require a card scan to print, vastly more. I've been at schools and I've seen things printed 500 times and then discarded.
We don't have any monitoring on the printing at this point, do we?
Rough volume counters, but no accurate print metering, which is something PaperCut would also solve.
I mean, with these newer machines, they're going to have that code to print a copy, and you don't know who's using them. And administrators will be able to crack down and say, hey, not so many filled copies, and so on, to try to keep costs down. So.
We can save a lot of money. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next item is board communications to district. Shared a little something with you as well, so there's some ideas, so, you guys just want to maybe write down some ideas that you're thinking too, collect them up, and then maybe the next one, kind of, recognize some on it and share it.
What do you think of this as a regular email piece, a newsletter, what was your line of thought?
Well, I think at least once a month we should send something out from the board, just to communicate to the district what's going on and so forth.
Oh, John and I talked about something like this before, so.
I mean, the other thing that I was thinking about this earlier today, I feel like we've been running around chasing fires since we got here, and I'd really like to just be able to start doing the actual work that we were elected to do, instead of worrying about, the nonsense that goes on. So I think it's good that we communicate some things, but I mean, there's sources out there that are going to continue to attack us no matter what we say or do, so chasing those, I think, is a waste of our time.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. But I think this needs to go,
I think it's important to have facts out there.
No, I agree, we
Yeah.
definitely need facts out there.
and the room's not full tonight, we're not gonna get 10,000 people in here, so I think, the information needs to get out, what's the board doing this month kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that part of it, absolutely.
Like a newsletter.
Yeah. What did they vote on, what did they, so forth. Okay, and then the next item. We already discussed the
July meeting.
So, superintendent search. So in your packet, we have a bunch of different firms here. It's anywhere from $6,500 up to $21,000. Are you one of these firms?
Well, I see one from the MSB. I see one from HYA. Is that it?
There should be some more in here. Should be one from MLI.
Oh, we got HAA.
This MASB one is the same one we got.
Yeah.
I can tell you from what Terry told me that we've always used NASBs for shelters.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
they're 7,500, I believe, plus some expenses that they might have. I think Mike's used them before.
Well, they're in contact with basically every district in the state.
Right.
And the only thing that I would see coming out of another search firm would be somebody that's looking nationally versus centered in Michigan.
Right.
MASB still puts it out there nationally. I believe we use them, superintendent after Fowle. MASB.
I know we use it for Bible.
No, Fowle we use.
No, I think we use a private one.
We use a private one.
I thought it was private.
Yeah, we use that lady. I forget the name. I think the one after Fowle was Bingham when we hired him was from
These are all. I don't know, I'm not familiar with any companies, so.
And there's one in Detroit.
They seem to hire
Metropolitan Detroit Bureau.
area.
Yeah. They were the cheaper of the bunch, so they were 65.
Yeah, Brady Associates looks like they're estimating over $20,000.
What was the total cost of MASB?
No, it's
75 plus expenses. And if you look at Ray and Associates, most of their, I mean, they don't have many references from the state of Michigan. Actually, none.
It's hard to find many companies that are doing this, that are specialized just in this now, so.
I think the MASB seems to find that they're being biased for the search.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the MASB has a great track record. We've used them before, and they're,
When did you say we used them?
13 years a year, but we go to the opportunities in that little line. We see what MASB did. We never found their superintendent.
yeah, if you look at their list of references, it's huge.
Yeah.
I think it's a no-brainer, honestly.
Anybody else want to add anything? Want to add anything?
If you're looking at MASB, what's their length of time to find a superintendent that they report there?
15 weeks, I think.
Could take a
14
long
to
time,
15
Greg,
weeks.
to be here.
Years.
Well, I mean, because there's a time crunch, and I think you want to get somebody in here before the start of school, they need to be told to put their foot on the gas. And I think that's feasible because there are a lot of people, a lot of superintendents aren't going to want to come in October. So they need to, you know, they're getting paid money to do this. They represent you. They should be encouraged to meet your demands. I mean, and the demands of the staff and the students. And that would be my advice. I mean, I know what they like to do, but that's not what they have to do.
All right. So we're going to schedule reports. Jason is here. Give us the survey results. So,
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, lifesaver. So all my wondrous PowerPoint skills are on display. Hello, everyone. So we put a brief survey out in the field Monday, March 25th, 2019. This is a real preliminary survey. It's what we would call a qualitative survey. And there was some discussion that the community wanted to voice some concerns and to gather some information about the happenings in the district. Emails went out to just shy of 3,000 teachers and parents within the district. We got a response rate of about 34%, which when you think about it, it isn't fully 100% representative of everybody who's associated with the district. But from the survey practitioner's mindset, anytime you get more than about 20% on an email survey, that's pretty good. However, I would caution that any of these findings are preliminary, and I wouldn't go into overgeneralizing because, as you can see, the survey closed April 17th, so it's open for about 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks, close to 4 weeks. A lot has changed. So what we have here today, if we can move to the next slide, are some findings. We asked people in the space provided below, please rank the top 3 actions DPS should start in regard to its educational programs and services. So with a survey like this, think about it like a wall. Everybody comes up and says, this is what's important to me, and they paint it there. So you're not going to see big percentages because a lot of different ideas were shared. I gave you the raw percentage, the number of, because each of these, there's about 3,000 items that I hand-coded, not once but twice. And yeah, statistically speaking, I give you what's known as a Z-score. That's like what we call a relative score. So the higher the score, really the more important it was to responders. So in this case, what should we start doing? Listening to teachers, curriculum decisions. On top of that, folks expressed their concern about starting up or restarting the traditional letter grading system. Third, down the line there is get yourself a qualified superintendent. So if you look at that relative score, it's almost 4 standard deviations away from the mean, which in geek speak is pretty important to people. So we can go down. If we move to the next slide, I'll give you some examples of actual responses. These were actual quotes that I coded, and those similar to all the different categories that you see here. So if we look at, I even left the typos in, okay? And the focus on kids, not yourselves, making students a priority. That one hit me because I'm a student. I'm a lover of students. Providing tutoring, after school tutoring help for struggling learners. Eva talks about the Board of Education, listening and decision making, allowing teachers and administrators to operate curriculum, not micromanaged by BOE. So if you go back a slide, so this is what I'm presenting were the most commonly occurring. So I kind of broke it after 2%. So 2% of respondents were saying these things. So incorporate best practices, curriculum decisions, etc. All right, if we can move forward to. So another item I wanted to discuss today was the stop responses. So we asked, well, what should we start doing? Then it was, what should we stop doing as a district? The number one thing that came up is, get rid of that number system, okay? So those responding, parents and concerned teachers, the number system was not very popular, and the data here provide validation of that. Constant changes, that was a relatively high scoring one, and that could talk to a lot of different things, but most people just expressed, let's get on a path, let's forget all these constant changes, etc. So I think part of it is I can't define, because I'm an outsider to this district. I want to see the district do well, obviously, but constant changes, people are referring to things that have been going on, or what they perceived had been going on. So it's almost kind of a flip, what people wanted to start, what they want to stop. You know, if you look at using titles learner and facilitator, people mention that quite a bit. I remember reading this and saying, what the heck is a learner and what does this mean? And that was good because my untrained eye, you know, okay, I'm going to code this, and hopefully somebody knows what that means. So again, these are people's perceptions. We wanted to give them an opportunity to put out there what it was that they thought was important. And it's like I saw wit and wisdom, and I'm just like, who wants to get rid of wit and wisdom? It's a great thing. I try to be witty. But that means something. I don't know exactly what it means, but apparently an appreciable number of people don't like it. If we flip to the next slide, here's some representative. This is going to go up on the website, right?
Dale.
Okay. So people can look through this. So constant changing is not good for students. They need stability. Constant rearranging of classrooms, teachers, buildings, school names is adding confusion. So that's got coded under constant changing. Bullying, I mean, that's a big issue for a lot of schools. The bullying needs to decrease slash stop. Calling teachers, facilitators, and students learners. Yeah, there you are. Learn to slowly integrate new ideas. So I think that a lot of expressions people are making is, you know, changes are good, but let's study this more. That's kind of the sentiment that I got from reading over these close to 3,000 responses. So stricter discipline, etc. Now, these findings aren't dispositive in the sense that I'm giving you a prescription of how to run a school district. I'd never do that. But I think they're very representative of what's on the minds of teachers and parents within the district. So if you move forward to the next one. So what we did was we wanted to kind of like look at the main things that were coming out, okay? So when we looked at the START responses, I reclassified a number of responses and kind of coded it the old way, the times, I don't know, 18 months or so ago, things that can be associated with that. And so when you put those together, approximately 35% of respondents, which is not a majority, but kind of had this affinity to doing things that were done prior. Better communication at 9%, then the new way, 7%. Let's start or continue doing the new stuff. Improve student discipline, which I think is, you know, important in these days. Compromise is important in all, I guess, places. But I saw qualified superintendent, yeah, we need that. But then improve school image, and I think that's important to a lot of people. So if we move on to the next thing, I did the same thing with the stop responses. So the new way, about 43% of people said, you know, stop doing all these changes that we've implemented. We also want to stop with the poor communication, the poor school image, the perceived lack student discipline. About 7% said, hey, let's, you know, stop doing things that we used to do. Unqualified superintendent, and of course, about 5% said stop the Board of Education. So that was in this reanalysis. And if we flip to the next, I gave a backup slide and what went into all of this. I know it's a lot, but if we post it up, people can look over it. So that's what I have for today. I don't want to monopolize the time that we have. I know it's a long meeting. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
What is your Z-score? Will it go from 1 to 10?
Z-score will go from 0 at the middle. Statistically, what you do is you take a raw score, you subtract from it the mean, and then you divide by the standard deviation. So a positive Z-score means standard deviation units above the mean. A negative means standard deviation units below the mean. It's relative. So I can compare two things. If one has a Z-score of 2 and one has a Z-score of 1, you can say exactly that this thing is exactly twice as more important than the other thing. I love data. You know, one of the things is I think it's very incumbent that potentially we follow up on this with more focused surveys. I think giving the community and teachers a voice anonymously. I collect no information of name, email, or anything. The platform that I use, which is SurveyMonkey, they ask me, do you want to turn that off? I turn it off because I'm not interested in any one person. I'm interested in aggregate responses. Overall, how are people feeling? So this is somewhat encouraging because I think as I read, some things have already been put in motion, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's because of this, but I think it's because people come to realize that there are certain things that are important to people, and you know, by collecting information like that, I think it helps make decisions. I'm not saying that the majority rule or anything like that, but I think it allows us to set priorities. And I love data.
Can you go back a couple slides?
Sure.
There was one slide that showed a really high Z-score.
Yeah, go back. Competency-based 6.
Okay.
So if you go back to the start one, 5. So it's almost unheard of to see. I see Z-scores that are just shy of 3, and I call that an outlier. When you're approximately 6 standard deviations from the mean, that tells me relative to the other responses, that's really important.
Listening to the teachers, you're saying that 5 on both of them.
Yeah.
Great, okay.
So 1 is 1 standard deviation above the mean. So that's important because more than a majority of people, relatively speaking, are stating that in terms of the total responses. When you get Z-scores that are past 3, statistically we say that, well, that needs attention, that's an outlier. And it's not a miscoding because I'm pretty accurate in coding the responses. But you know, if I were to really look at these, I would say, okay, your top 4 right here should be getting a lot of attention, okay, in terms of starting. So listening to the teachers, okay, when it comes to curriculum decisions. I'm not saying anyone doesn't listen to teachers, but that's the perception of the sample, of the 1,000 people. 87 of them mentioned that, okay? So to put it into perspective, yeah, it's not, it happens with surveys like this because there's no restraint on what people say. Some people will say things like, they'll just type in no, well I can't code that. Or they'll type in, you know, I really like golden retrievers. Well, that I can't code that. So anyone can say anything, and that's one of the benefits of opening up a qualitative survey like this, because we're not, quote unquote, picking the kind of questions that we want answers to. We're letting people say, this is what's important to me. So you're never going to have, like, 80% of people all fixating on one thing. So that's why the relative scores are really important.
Just because of the nature of the survey.
That's correct.
Because it's open.
That's right. So I was impressed because I've never seen Z-scores like this, so thank you, TPS.
You're welcome, Jason.
Any other questions?
You're open to continuing a relationship with us and doing
I
this
am.
in the future.
I am, yeah. I would.
You haven't had it after this one?
No,
that.
you know, by my day job, what I do is I work for Siena Heights University, and I'm their data person. And there's nothing in me that is more important to have viable public education in our country. And if I can, you know, take an objective eye, put surveys in the field, get responses, bring those responses to decision makers, and that makes a positive impact or change, that makes me feel good. But yes, of course.
All right, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. stick around, or can I go to dinner?
You're dismissed.
Thanks, everyone, I appreciate it. I don't like my back to people. I'm used to teaching classes, and, but thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
And good luck with all your getting the good hard work done. Thank you.
All right, moving on to action items. I get a motion to approve the MHSA cooperative agreement for the high school ice hockey program.
I make support.
Any discussion?
I don't see anybody wearing trousers, sweaters.
I think it's great.
I do too.
Yeah.
Oh, you heard it.
Roll call.
And then the first one,
Can you just say aye?
Yeah.
Abbott?
aye.
Benzing?
Aye.
Brooks? Aye. Johnson?
He's absent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hagemeyer?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, I make a motion to approve the THS Spain trip for March 2020.
Support.
Any discussion?
Abbott?
Aye.
Benzing?
Aye.
Brooks? Aye. Hagemeyer?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next item is the set the date for the July organizational meeting. So I'll make a motion to set July 15th at 7 p.m. here at the annex.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in-
Is this gonna be the retreat one or not?
This is just the organizational meeting, so, but we can add that later. if we
Okay.
want, I guess. We need to find out from the lawyer if we do a retreat or
Well, I know you can do it, because it before, unless
Well,
they
the
change the
laws-
law, now you can.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're compliant.
Well, of course we will. Make sure we're compliant.
Roll call?
Yes, please.
Abbott?
Aye.
Benzing?
Aye.
Brooks? Aye. Hagemeyer?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
Motion
So is
carries.
this the set the date for all the meetings
Yes.
for the whole next year?
Okay, the next item is the superintendent search. So I need a motion from someone to recommend the firm.
I recommend we go with MASD.
I'll second that.
Roll call. Abbott?
Do we have,
I'm sorry.
Discussion. Discussion, yep.
just a thought, but we're under a time crunch. If we threw a bonus out there to the MASB to find somebody quicker, just something we can look at putting into the contract where they get,
Let's just pay them straight price and have them get them us here on time.
Well, let's also make sure we get the right person.
Right.
Yeah, they have a system, and it works pretty well, and, that's speed it up.
well, that's what I'm saying, if we just.
A lot of it's gonna be on us, on what?
They're gonna require a meeting with us.
Right, several.
So we gonna have to be available as
Okay,
soon as they
yeah.
can get in here.
Which we will.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Roll call. Abbott?
Aye.
Benzing?
Aye.
Brooks? Aye. Hagemeyer?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
I move
Now, wait.
the consent agenda.
Is that just for these things? Yeah.
Second.
Any discussion?
Roll call. Abbott?
Aye.
Benzing?
Aye.
Brooks?
Aye.
Hagemeyer?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, and Mr. Lewis, would you like to say a
I
few words?
would. So for the first time, I'm like Mr. Young, I'm not used to having my back to everybody. I don't want to see my good side and show the other. This is, I normally don't write out notes when I speak. This is what I think, I'm going to waste 10 minutes of your time, which means there's going to be a lot of hot air going into an already hot room. The reason I wrote as much down as I did is because there are several things I need to say. This is day 21 of official work days for me since I've been here. Because I did have those 2 weeks where I was in Europe, so I've been around longer than that. I just wasn't physically here. First of all, I want to apologize some to the administrative team. I feel like I kind of walked on them at times after I came back. My first week here, I felt like I'd just been put into a drop zone. I didn't know which way was up. I didn't have the map. And what I'd done here before was, this was different. I mean, in 5 years, or actually just 3.5 years, but 5 years since having served as assistant principal working in a building, it was a lot different. So a lot of the faces had changed. The software systems we use had changed. There were just a lot of differences. Week 2, we had the tragedy with AJ Mary. When I went to Europe, I came back with like a real sense of urgency. So to these 5 and the 2 who aren't here, Tricia Howard, who's ill, and Melanie Nowak, who also wasn't here today because she's ill. I think everybody's suffering right now from pollen-related allergies from 40 inches of rain since April 1st. But thank you. Right on cue. So I think everybody's right there, and we did. When you get in the middle of these budget discussions and you're against a deadline, and we were. I also need to add Stacy Bailey in that group. She's written here, so I don't forget her. Did a tremendous job. A person leaving the district, professional, did what she was supposed to do. Nikki Reinhardt, who doesn't like speaking in front of people, but is an excellent person with handling the accounting procedures that we have here, and was very helpful in this whole process. So that team deserves a lot of credit, more than me. The teachers, I reached out to people in TEA. And so maybe that's different than what we're used to seeing. I'm not sure. It's for those who've been around when Jerry Pound was here. He reached out to everybody. If you have a fire, the first responder isn't always a fireman. The goal is to get the fire put out. And I'm not saying we're burning. I'm just saying that's an analogy. I mean, it was all hands on deck because I agree with what Mr. Young put up there. We need a qualified superintendent. You don't have one right now. I'm here as a stopgap measure. I'm doing the best I can with it. But I've never had a staff that worked for me, so I quite often forget to mention things. Somebody will come in and talk to me, oh yeah, I can do that, and then forget to tell some people what's going on in their building. So for that, I apologize. Some of the lessons I've learned so far, I mean, there's strife in this district. It's not a wreck like a lot of people would have you think, especially. It just isn't. I mean, we've got some things to work through. I worked in this district for 26 years. We've had hiccups like everybody else has. I mean, the auto industry, it's cyclical. Schools can be kind of cyclical. A lot of that's based on funding because our funding is cyclical. Depends on who's in charge, who the governor is, what party they're from, what the houses are composed of. All those things factor into that. So we're seeing another one of those cycles. And it's not just here. Saline's cutting $1.9 million. From a school that's a top 5 or top 10 school, public school in the state every year. So we're not in a vacuum at all by any stretch of the imagination. To be in charge of 2,800, just under 2,800 students here, I went through today and started looking at some names and got some help from somebody else to do that. And I mean, you're looking at about almost 5,000 parents. You say, wait a minute, there's 2 parents for every child. Yes, but there are multiple kids from some families, so that's what brings that number down. 200 staff members, 8,000 people that we serve. And I guess me as the leader of that community right now, to try and serve 8,000 people is pretty awesome. I mean, I don't mean awesome like, boy, I can't wait to get in there and do it. It's just an awesome responsibility, and it's something I've never done before. And it's different. I can't keep everybody happy. I couldn't keep 8 people happy, probably. And 800 would be hard. 8,000 is nearly impossible.
Sorry, Greg. Next time I'll call.
It's all right. I want to make a joke about technology, but I won't. One thing I have noticed, and really, when you look at what's going on here, I mean, I've read Lee Iacocca's book. I've read the book Alan Mulally had, and I'm not Lee Iacocca or Alan Mulally by a darn sight. I'm not saying that. You don't have him right now. You don't even have anything close to that. But they don't institute, they come into a situation, and the first thing they do is analyze problems, try and institute change. They don't even do the change right away. They analyze the problems first. Year 1, at the end of a year, both of them said, here's the direction we need to go. We're trying to do that, this team and I, in 4 weeks, basically, 6, because they were here 2 weeks that I wasn't. And it's been kind of coming along down the line, but you know, our administrative team's been kind of working in a vacuum. Our teachers have felt the same way. It's been unique. I mean, and you know, we can say, well, was this superintendent's fault or that superintendent, the previous or whomever? It really doesn't matter. All that stuff's in the rearview mirror. If you're looking at those people, it should be to see where the breakdowns were and just correct them. We're not pointing fingers, not placing blame. That's not what I do. It doesn't do any good that, you know, somebody kicks the ball in the 7th inning and you lose a game and it was a shortstop. You don't blame that shortstop. Somebody else struck out in the 3rd inning that could have won the game too. I know working with the staff, and I'm digressing just a second here, I know reaching out to some of the TDA members to get help. I did that because of my relationship with a lot of them when I worked here as a teacher and as an administrator. So I met with the music group. I mean, they're passionate about what they do. The teachers are passionate about what they do. The administrators are passionate about what they do. Our parents are passionate about their kids. There is no job that I can think of that's more, not this job, but as a teacher, when somebody comes in and says, here's 30 kids, they're my most prized possessions, take good care of them and do the best you can with them, and they turn around and leave. The first time that happened to me, when I first got hired at a different district, was I started thinking, I'm 22 years old and I'm in charge of this stuff right now. They taught me this in school, but it just started. And it's a privilege to be able to do that. I think 99% of our teaching staff feels that way. I'm almost halfway down the page.
You don't have that much stuff written down.
So we need to, well, one good thing I've noticed by walking around the little bit of time I was here before the students left, they don't seem as concerned about all this stuff as the adults. And they go with the flow, they roll the punches way better than we do. I mean, part of that's the advantage of being a kid. You don't have to worry about anything, just do what everybody else tells you to do, right? But they're the most resilient people we have. I've said this at every meeting, the staff that we have here, I don't like the word I because I don't own anybody. The staff that we have here is one of the top groups in the state. I know because my kids had some of the teachers that are here. I still think they had some of the best people in the state. Every one of them were able to go out and achieve, have doctoral degrees. I know a lot of friends of mine, one of the guys I hired here, his 2 kids, same thing. I mean, they came from here. They didn't move in from somewhere else. They didn't go somewhere else to get educated. It started right here. And when Griff put his information up, the day I like to jokingly say I was condemned to this job, and about us being in the 89th percentile of high schools in the state of Michigan, that means we're in the top 11%. If you can subtract 81 from 100 in your head, and if you can, you're better than I am. But we're in that top 11%. This town is not in the top 11% of socioeconomic communities in the state of Michigan. And we always hear that all learning's tied to socioeconomic. Then if it is, our teachers and our kids have overachieved because they went all, you might as well say a top 10 school, and we are not top 10. We're not a Grosse Pointe, we're not a Saline, we're not an Ann Arbor, we're not a Okemos or one of those big school districts, and we were managed to do that with the people we have here because they're passionate, and so are our parents. So I think what we need to do going forward, and by the way, interesting, I interviewed a young lady today who wants to be a math teacher here. Hopefully we got a hold of her. I know we left a message and she hadn't called back. Did we ever hear from her? Sure. Okay. Everybody I interviewed that wanted to come here and say, have you been paying attention to what's going on in the news or in the paper and local about what's going on in the district? I have. Because these people are the age of my kids or considerably younger. And I don't want to, no holds barred, here's where we're at. And I asked this one young lady, I said, then why would you want to come here? And she said, because I've been following on M Live, and I look at the passion from the parents and the teachers, and I want to go to a school that's passionate. She's leaving another district that's within a 20-mile radius of here to come here because she's not afraid. She sees good things out of that. And that's encouraging to me. I mean, some people don't like conflict. I don't think she likes conflict, but she likes the passion, and she liked the fact that it was about learning, not football teams or something else. So I think what we really need to do is check ourselves, where we're at with our, you know, when we come into work every day, if you work here, and I don't even use that term. This is the first time, I told my wife, I think it was last week, I said, I'm going to work. And I stopped for a second and I said, you know, all the years that I was here before as a teacher and administrator, I never said I was going to work. I'm going to school. Because that's the way I felt about it. Every day I learned a little bit more from the students than they learned from me. Of course, they outnumbered me about 120 to 1, and I do have 2 ears instead of 1 mouth, so when I listen, I learned a lot from my students. When you look at our assets here, besides the staff and our students, best facilities in the county, bar none. Yep, we got some upgrades to do on boilers and HVAC things, okay? We'll figure that out. They're mechanical. We're not going to get outsmarted by an air conditioner or a boiler. That'll get fixed. The last thing I want to say, I mean, it's one of my favorite quotes from Teddy Roosevelt. At least he's the one that's credited with it. It says there's no end to the good that can be accomplished if no one cares who gets the credit. I think that team right over there feels that way. I think our tech team feels that way. I know our teachers feel that way. Our kids just want to succeed and be successful and just turn them loose and let them go. Thank you very much.
Items for next agenda will be the building handbooks, district calendar, fee schedules for food, athletics, facility use, and the food service contract renewal, and we'll be setting the date for board meetings as well.
Can I would like to remove the technology from even voting. I think we need a superintendent, and I think that our IT guys are doing a great job. And I'm not really sure how we even got to this point, to tell you the truth. With ISD coming from a proposal, but I would just say we table the whole thing until we get a new superintendent, just forget it.
I agree with you, because it's not just a simple sign on a contract. Technology is not.
There's a lot to it, that's right. And we've not hardly even heard from our new IT department, and they need to tell us a lot more. And
I agree.
As they're going along. So do I have to make a motion?
Yep.
I make a motion to totally remove the technology services vote from the action items. Thank you.
Roll call. Abbott.
Aye.
Benzing.
Aye.
Brooks. Aye. McNamara.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Simpson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, that'll bring us to our next public comment portion. So you've got 3 minutes to come to the podium and speak. And please say your name.
Hi, I'm Pam Bunch. I'm revisiting a resource that I made available in February when we thought that the committees were going to start meeting in March, and I'd like to submit it to you again, and in the interest of having a common understanding of educational concepts that the committees will be discussing and working through. This was a document, or it was actually a letter to the editor that I sent through the Herald, and it goes over 5 distinct parts of educational concepts: curriculum, being the what of a student's education; teaching methods or pedagogy, being the how of student learning; educational standards, which are the guidelines for instruction; student assessment, which asks how well did we teach and learn; and school logic and learning school logistics and learning environments. And it's got a little bit more information. I cited some research and just gives a common platform for people to have discussions, and then hopefully be able to analyze those concepts and make decisions, or at least recommend decisions. So I made a paper copy for you. I will send Mr. Lewis, I think, the digital copy. I would be happy for you to add to it as the committees come up with concepts that they need to agree on what that means to them as they're discussing it. So I also I sent along a Bloom's taxonomy triangle. And it's a very simple thing that I learned when I was going through teacher education of the hierarchy of learning from least complex to most complex thinking, and how teachers can address those different levels through their methodology. And I'd like to submit that maybe the committees will be going through those same levels of remembering or recalling facts, understanding those facts, applying the information, analyzing the different concepts, evaluating them, making a stand, justifying a standard decision, and producing new or original work. So it's my hope that when those committees finally get going, that they will go through that process and come up with really valid recommendations for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janet Craig. With regards to the survey, I also like data, and I think you like that too. I had spoken at a previous board meeting earlier this spring about the importance of recognizing your bias when interpreting data. So I just want to bring some points to the survey. So today we received the kind of summary of what he presented. So I want to remind everybody that what he said, it was qualitative. This was not quantitative data, which we all want to look for. It was also an open-ended survey sent out to the most passionate and vested groups, the parents and the teachers. So we ended up getting a lot of very polarized, passionate responses. He only presented the start-stop data, and if you look at that, the answers were not independent of each other. If you wanted to start something, you also wanted to stop its opposite. So while they both, if we go to the most logical or polarizing topic, the new old ways of doing things, they both score very high. That's very obvious. I wouldn't consider that a more important topic. I mean, statistically speaking, he has his scores and all of that, but what I want to reiterate is that it is the most polarizing topic, and they are opposites of each other. So therefore, they both score very high in the respective categories. So again, just please be careful when interpreting data from any survey, especially open-ended surveys. I also filled out the survey. I was really grateful to have the opportunity to voice my opinion and my concerns. I would say what I would like to see come from this is that this is a prioritized list of discussion topics. It is not a mandate for any one thing, and everything in the report should be considered. Just because something had a lower Z-score doesn't mean it's insignificant. It means it did not prioritize as highly as maybe some more passionate, polarizing topics. So just some of my insights from what I saw. Thank you.
Any board comment or discussion?
I have two things. Number one, I want to thank Greg. Greg, I want to thank you. You got to get off your phone and listen to me.
Grandson picture, sorry, it just came in hot off the camera.
I really admire the fact that you're going straight to the teachers and the administrators and everyone's working together, and that's really that bottom-up approach of trying to meet in the middle is, to me, the best solution for everyone. And that's all, we've ever really wanted, so I'm glad that's happening. And committees. What are we doing with committees? I mean, I know everybody just kind of got back. Are we going to be starting those committees soon, or?
Probably after the 4th of July. I mean, they just got done with the budget. This week's over.
So are we going to start a schedule? Who's putting together the schedule?
Greg will put together the schedule.
What committees are we talking about? 'Cause I don't.
So somebody needs to give him all the committee information. information, this probably doesn't have it, and then we'll talk again. That's all I got.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what you said, but I also want to thank the administrators for all the hard work that you guys put into this.
Yes,
I know that
I
there was
meant
a
to
lot
thank everyone.
going on with the budgets and, you know, a lot of pennies pinched, so I really appreciate all the time you guys put into it as well. And Greg, thank you. We've got a great team here, so thanks.
I'll say thank you to Mr. Lewis. Don't call him Mr. Clark.
You don't like calling people younger than you, Mr.
I've known him for quite a while, and he's really dug in and worked, and I believe he's done a great job for the school.
He's getting tired, and really, and that was a key component to that. I mean, you saw the statistics, whether it was start, stop, anything in between. I mean, we need a qualified superintendent here, and I'd be the first one to admit it. And every time I think I get my finger in a leak, there's a new one. So somebody who has a lot more experience and training can probably do a lot more prevention. But I still want to go back to the fact you need to push MASB. I worry about getting a really good candidate after Labor Day. Because who's going to want to pull up out of there as an existing superintendent? They don't want to leave at that time of the year. So there are people out there looking for a job, looking for improvement, looking for the challenge of a new district. And I don't think this one's probably that much more challenging than any other. I think with what that group and the teachers group to work, whoever comes in here is positioned pretty well budget-wise to move forward. I mean, the key now is to make sure that we keep moving forward in a positive way, we don't create our own distress signals, and we keep our students here. Because I think most of the students want to be here.
So whoever contacts the MASB, we'll tell them we want to have a deadline by the end of August.
I think we need to impress upon.
I'd have that discussion with them, for sure.
Well, the first thing we do is set up a meeting.
Do they think it can be done?
You know, I've never hired a superintendent, but I mean, I'll say this about superintendent search companies. They're making a profit on this thing. So you're the customer, and they're the people that provide the service. And most of them have the means to work at the speed that they need to.
Yeah, they usually take like a month or so to put out, to take resumes, and then there's a lot of work after that.
And like you said, if they're going to meet with us, we need to make sure that we're available right away.
Do we need to do anything else at this point to get this process started?
Reach out to them and hire them if that's what you decide to.
I'll meet with Terry tomorrow and we'll get it rolling, so. We've
approved it,
Yeah,
so
we approved it, so
if we can get that contract signed this week, that would be great.
I think they'll be itchy to get a hold of you, but I wouldn't wait another week because you get into the
No.
No, we need to get it done by Wednesday.
It'd be nice to meet this week, if we could. It's kind of fast.
They are making a profit on finding you a superintendent, so they serve you.
Yes.
If one person, one company can't meet that, I tell, well, this one will.
So I will continue that. Thank you to our administrators and Greg. That was amazing work that you guys did with the budget. Cannot thank you enough for that. And thank you to everybody here tonight for your patience while we got the copying situation cleared up. But that's okay, you know. Mistakes happen, it's how you fix them.
I just want to be able to pick my board packet up on Thursday. Or have it dropped off. We used to have it delivered right to our house. Some people don't like hard copies, but I would just soon have my hard copy and I can go through everything and take notes.
We'll figure that out, but yeah.
Well, we've had a long time to figure that out, so.
Well, why don't everybody email your preferences to Terry this week? That makes it easy. CC Greg.
Well, and I want to thank Greg, I want to thank the administrator, I want to thank the teachers, because Greg, I know you, it was work towards consensus, I think. I think it got a little contentious. I think everybody expressed themselves and their feelings. And
they should.
And they should, absolutely. So I know you guys worked really hard on it, so thank you. We appreciate that. And Anna, this is going to be Anna's last board meeting, being our secretary. So
So who's in as a replacement? Harry's coming back?
Yep, Terry, right back, yep. That's all I got. Anybody else? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support?
Want to discuss it?
No. You got nothing to say about it. Aye.
Aye.
What? Can't hear. You'll have to watch the video.